Angra is a Brazilian metal band known for its symphonic interludes, highly technical instrumental playing and Brazilian regional elements. History. Founding. Angra was formed in November 1991 by Santa Marcelina Music College students vocalist André Matos, duo guitarist Rafael Bittencourt and Angra copyright Linhas, and were joined by former Rafael Bittencourt bandmate drummer Marcos Antunes, as well as former Firebox bassist and former both Rafael Bittencourt and Angra copyright Linhas high school mate Lua Esmeralda. With this lineup, several of the first band hits were composed, mainly by Rafael Bittencourt and André Matos. The very first song to take form was Time, which later became part of their first album. Angel's Cry, composed by Matos and Bittencourt, came short after. Queen of the Night was originally titled Reina, and was written by Bittencourt while he played with Marcos Antunes in another band. The song was then revived to integrate Angra's repertoire, and Carry On was brought ready to the band, composed by André Matos. In the beginning of 1992, Angra copyright Linhas left and guitarist Angra copyright Hernandez replaced him. In the short time that Hernandez stayed in the band, he changed the existing songs' arrangements, giving them body and substance. A lot of his licks were kept by his replacement, Kiko Loureiro. It was during Hernandez's time in the band that Evil Warning took shape. An old song by Bittencourt called Reaching Horizons was then incorporated to the band. The last work of this lineup was on the tribute to Kate Bush Wuthering Heights. Personnel changes and Angel's Cry. Shortly after guitarist Angra copyright Hernandez left the band, Kiko Loureiro, who has played with both Antunes and Bittencourt in other bands, joined Angra. After almost an entire year of rehearsal they released the demo Reaching Horizons in 1992, which was received very positively by critics and achieved unexpected success both in Brazil and Europe. It was one of the first releases from Lim Music Products, which later would become one of Europe's premier power metal specialty labels. During the recording sessions for their first album Angel's Cry, Marcos Antunes left the band. Siege's Evans drummer Alex Holzeth was called to finish the album. Ricardo Confessore was later invited to be the new drummer. This change established Angra in its most enduring and prolific form, which lasted from 1993 to 2000. Angel's Cry was recorded at Gamma Ray guitarist Kai Hansen's studio in Hamburg, Germany. The album included performances by Heaven's Gate guitarist Sascha Paeth as well as Gamma Ray guitarists Kai Hansen and Dirk's High Currency Cchter. The album was released in Brazil in 1993 and featured many classical influences as well as an adventurous cover of Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights. The album was a great success in Angra's native Brazil as well as Japan, where it sold over 100,000 copies. That year Angra dominated the polls of the Brazilian magazine Rock Brigade, obtaining awards for Best New Band, Best Album, Best Singer, Best Album Cover and Best Keyboard Player. Due to the album's success in Japan, an EP was issued on the Japanese market which included remixed versions of songs from Angel's Cry. In the following year the album was subsequently released in Europe through Dream Circle, and in France by CNR, Monsters of Rock Festival and Holy Land. In 1996 Angra opened for AC/DC in Brazil and was invited to the inaugural Brazilian Monsters of Rock Festival, sharing stage with Kiss, Black Sabbath and Slayer. After the festival, the band embarked on what would be a very successful Brazilian tour, which eventually ended in Europe in 1995. Holy Land, an ambitious problem involving huge orchestration, choirs, and Brazilian rhythms, was released in 1996. Once again the production was handled by Sascha Paeth and Charlie Balfiend. Holy Land proved even more successful than Angel's Cry, and the Japanese Victor release, including the bonus track Queen of the Night, went gold. Angra toured Japan for the first time following the album's success. That same year the EP Freedom Call was released, including cover versions of Judas Priest's Painkiller, which was followed by the release of the live album Holy Live, recorded in Paris in 1996. Lisbon and Fireworks. In 1998 Angra released the EP Lisbon, followed by the album Fireworks, both of which were produced by Chris Tsangarides. Fireworks was a departure from Angra's earlier experimental sound, focusing more on the traditional heavy metal sound and lacking the classical influences that were apparent in Angel's Cry and the Brazilian rhythms that were included in Holy Land. A lengthy world tour was set up in support for the album. Angra made an appearance at the Buenos Aires edition of Monsters of Rock. The Holy Box was released the same year by Lucretia Records, including exclusive acoustic tracks. In 2000, Angra co-headlined shows in Europe with Time Machine and Stratovarius. Big Shakeup and Rebirth. During mid-2000, Angra split, parting ways with vocalist Andre Matos and its entire rhythm section, bassist Luis Marotti and drummer Ricardo Confessore. After a great deal of speculation concerning the end of the band, remaining guitarists and founders Kiko Loureiro and Rafael Bittencourt started drafting musicians to preserve the band. After the indecision of the drummer Clau Gamblet, Symbols vocalist Eduardo Fullery, Paul Di'Anno drummer Achilles Priester and bassist Felipe Andrioli were announced in March 2001 as the new members. Rebirth was released in 2001, produced by Dennis Ward. The album was both a critical and commercial success in Brazil and internationally, selling over 100,000 copies worldwide in less than 2 months. The album went gold in Brazil that same year. The EP Hunters and Prey was released in 2002, which included acoustic takes of Rebirth songs, as well as other new material, a cover of Mama by Genesis, and their first song with lyrics in Portuguese, Cor Section A Cor Section Ador. Angra went on to guest on many mainstream TV shows in Brazil. Angra would play live in Japan, appearing in Rock Machine in Spain, Wacken Open Air in Germany and Prog Power in Atlanta, Georgia, which was their first visit to the United States. Following the tour, various members of the group played as guests in many projects, including the Led Zeppelin tribute album The Metal Zeppelin. The music remains the same. Temple of Shadows recording session started in January 2004 at Mosh Studios in Sao Paulo, once again produced by Dennis Ward. The album featured guest vocalists Kai Hansen, Sabine Delspacher, Hansi K 1/4 RSCH and Brazilian legend Milton Nascimento. Temple of Shadows was a concept album based around a character known as the Shadow Hunter and his saga, which is described as the saga of a crusader knight that ends up disputing the expansionist ideals of the Catholic Church in the 11th century. The band toured Brazil and Europe, headlining shows in southern Europe throughout Spain, Italy, and France in February 2005. For the first time since its creation, the band played at a UK show at the Mean Fiddler in London, supported by Dragon Force, and later joined Finnish band Nightwish for the Japanese dates in March. The band then went to Taiwan and after, for the first time, he played in Oceania, headlining shows in Australia. Angra resumed the Brazilian tour and then returned to Europe for the Lorca Rock Festival, Live in Italy and Bull Rock Festival, sharing stages with big heavy metal names like Iron Maiden. Aurora Consurgens, management problems, Confessore's return. Later in 2006, Angra worked once again with producer Dennis Ward on their new album, entitled Aurora Consurgens, focusing on a non-concept album as Rebirth was. Instead, they pursued a close relative of the idea, a theme album. Also in 2006, Fabio Laguna composed a solo progressive instrumental album called Freakies along with drummer Achilles Priester and bassist Felipe Andrioli. In mid-2007, the band took a break due to an unresolved situation with its manager, who was also the owner of the Angra brand. As a result, other non-resolved situations between the members arose, culminating in an indefinite hiatus until a solution was reached. In 2008, singer Eddie Fullery was originally reported as saying that Angra has been terminated, but this was later revealed to be both a misunderstanding and a misreporting of his words. Edge later clarified what was meant by his earlier comments: Angra is not done. We're taking a break, a pause. The band is going through some difficult management issues, and all of us are doing our best to get back on the road. In 2009, the band's official site was taken down. Instead, the homepage announced that the site was under construction and news would be released soon. In March 2009, the band's official site announced the return of drummer Ricardo Confessore after a 9-year hiatus to Angra, replacing Attribution Priester, who left the band to dedicate full force to his band Angra. The band went out on tour along with fellow Brazilian band Sepultura during 2009. Aqua and departure of Follory and Confessore. In the beginning of 2010, Angra started writing songs for their upcoming yet unnamed album due out in mid-2010. The album was composed partly at the members' houses and partly at Confessore's ranch, where they rehearsed and improved the arrangements of the new songs. In February, they came into Norcal Studios in São Paulo, to start recordings. The band members made home videos from the writing-recording process and released them to the fans almost weekly. On July 5 the band unveiled the cover and track list of the new album, named Aqua. On July 10, the first single A Rising Thunder was released. On July 15 a new song, called Lease of Life, was played for the first time in Brazilian radio station Kiss FM. The radio program featured an interview with Loureiro and Follory, followed by a high-quality play of the song. On August 11, Aqua was officially released in Japan and the Aqua tour began with a series of pocket shows, being followed by a Brazilian tour through several venues around the country. On May 23, 2012, Eduardo Follory issued an open letter in which he announced his departure from Angra. Despite not explaining why, he said he would focus on his future projects, including Alma. Edu was later replaced by Fabio Lion. In 2014, drummer Ricardo Confessore announced he would end his second tenure with the band. He was later replaced by 23-year-old Bruno Valverde. Secret Garden. On November 2014, the band posted a picture on Facebook unveiling the name of their 8th studio album, Secret Garden, to be released on December 17 in Japan and on January 16 in Brazil and Europe. Musical style, controversy. In April 2011, Kiko Loureiro accused Brazilian AXA copyright group Parangola copyright of plagiarism. According to the guitarist, the group had used a guitar riff from Nova Era in their 2007 song As Evics. In response, Angra fans or people simply supporting the metal band created the Twitter hashtags Parangalixo and Parango Plagio and Parangola Copyright plus Plagio, respectively. On the other hand, Parangola Copyright fans used the tag Parangalove. Members. Angra's first lineup was formed in 1991 with André Matos, Rafael Bittencourt, Angra Copyright Linhas, Luis Marotti and Marco Antunes. By 1992 Linhas was replaced by André Hernanz. Soon Hernanz was also replaced, this time by Kiko Loureiro. They recorded their first demo album Reaching Horizons, which was followed by Marco Antunes leaving the band in 1993 just prior to the recording of their first album Angel's Cry. Alex Holzeth, Rhapsody of Fire, was chosen as a guest for the recording sessions and later Ricardo Confessore joined the band for the tour. In 2000 Matos, Marotti and Confessore left the band, eventually grouping together to form the heavy metal band Shaman. In 2001 Eduardo Follory, Felipe Andrioli and Attribution Priester joined the band for the release of Rebirth. The band also recruited keyboard players on different occasions but they never received member status. In mid-2008, Priester left the band due to differences with other band members and in late 2008, Confessore confirmed his return to take over drums. In 2012, Follory announced his departure from the band to follow his other projects. Later in December of the same year, Fabio Lion, was invited to replace Edu Follory, being confirmed as the new band's vocalist after the album Angel's Cry 20th anniversary was released. In May 2014, Ricardo Confessore announced he would leave the band for a second time, being later replaced by Bruno Valverde. Current members, Rafael Bittencourt a Euro rhythm and lead guitar, backing vocals, Kiko Loureiro a Euro lead and rhythm guitar, backing vocals, Felipe Andrioli a Euro bass, backing vocals, Fabio Lion, lead vocals, Bruno Valverde, drums, former members, Marcos Antunes a Euro drums, percussion, Angra Copyright Linhas a Euro lead and rhythm guitar, backing vocals, Angra Copyright Hernanz a Euro lead and rhythm guitar, backing vocals, Luis Marotti a Euro bass, backing vocals, Angra Copyright Matos, lead vocals, keyboards, piano, Achilles Priester Euro drums, percussion, Eduardo Fulleri Euro lead vocals, acoustic guitar, Ricardo Confessore Euro drums. Percussion, guest musicians, Dirkshire Currency CHTER Euro lead guitar for Angels Cry, Sasha Payatha Euro lead guitar for Angels Cry, Leg Filho Euro keyboards, Fabio Ribeiro Euro keyboards, Alex Holzer Euro drums, guest for the recordings of Angels Cry, Fabio Laguna Euro keyboards, Kai Hansen Euro lead guitar for Angels Cry, vocals for Temple of Shadows, Hansi Car 1/4 RSCH Euro vocals for Temple of Shadows, Sabine Delspacher Euro vocals for Temple of Shadows, Milton Nascimento Euro vocals for Temple of Shadows, Daniel Dos Santos Euro keyboards, Tarja Turunen, Rock in Rio concert, Angra's 20th anniversary show, Simone Simons, vocals for Secret Garden, Doro Pesch, vocals for Secret Garden, Timeline. Discography, studio albums, information not found, X denotes an album that didn't chart or was not released in that country, Demos, Reaching Horizons, Eyes of Christ, Extended Plays, Evil Warning, Live Acoustic at FNAC, Freedom Call, Acoustic. And more, Hunters and Prey Noe 85 Japanese charts, compilations, Best Reached Horizons, Live albums, Holy Live Noe 87 Japanese albums charts, Rebirth World Tour Euro Live and Sao Paulo Noe 78 Japanese charts. Noe 156 Japanese charts, Angels Cry 20th Anniversary Tour, singles, Make Believe, Lisbon, Rainy Nights, Acid Rain, Wishing Well Noe 85 Brazilian charts, The Course of Nature, A Rising Thunder, Lease of Life, music videos, Carry On, Time, Make Believe, Lisbon, Rebirth, Pra Frente Brazil. Wishing Well, The Course of Nature, Lease of Life, Stand Away, Newborn Me, VHS and DVDs, Rebirth World Tour Euro Live in Sao Paulo, Angels Cry 20th Anniversary Tour Euro Live in Sao Paulo, references. Allmusic, biography by David White, external links, Angra official site, Angra at MySpace, Angra discography at Music Brains, Angra discography at Discogs, Angra at Encyclopedia Metallum, Angra at Metal Storm.